The walls of ADX Florence shook that night. At least, that's how it felt to the guards standing in the control room. The alarms were screaming. Red lights flashed across the thick concrete halls. Every steel door inside the prison slammed shut at the same time, locking almost 1,000 men inside tiny cells that felt like stone boxes. But the shock wasn't the alarms, or the shouting, or even the way the ground vibrated. No, the real shock was what they found on the surveillance screen. A single inmate, an inmate who was supposed to be under the highest level of security in the United States, was gone. Not dead, not sleeping, not sitting quietly in his cell. Gone. He had disappeared from a room designed so no human being could ever escape. A cell made of steel, concrete, laser sensors, and walls so thick they could stop a bomb. A cell watched by 4 cameras that never blinked. A cell that held a man the government refused to talk about. A man whose real name wasn't even in the prison computer. The warden, James Harlow, stared at the empty cell on the screen, his hands shaking. "This is impossible," he said. "He can't just vanish. Not from here. Not from ADX." No one answered him. They all felt the same cold fear in their stomachs. ADX Florence wasn't just any prison. It was the place people went when the government wanted them forgotten. The place for men considered too dangerous to be around anyone else. The place built so no one could ever get out. And now, one man had. The warden ran into the hallway, trying to hide the tremble in his voice. "Lock down every wing. No one enters or leaves. I want every officer armed. This is not a drill." He took one more look at the screen. The bed inside the cell was neat. The stainless steel toilet untouched. The concrete floor spotless. Nothing broken. Nothing out of place. It was almost like the man had walked straight through the walls. A low buzzing sound came from the ceiling speakers. The control room had switched the entire prison to emergency mode. Every inmate, even the most violent ones, even the ones who never spoke, were shouting now. Some were laughing. Some were crying. Some were calling out things like "his loose." His loose, like they knew exactly who the missing man was. But the worst part came seconds later, when a guard checking the outside cameras suddenly yelled, "Sir, something's moving near the perimeter gate." Everyone rushed to the screen. Someone was standing outside the prison. In the freezing darkness. In the silence of the Colorado desert. Where no inmate had ever been before. And the person wasn't running. They weren't hiding. They were waiting, like they wanted someone to see them. "That's him," a guard whispered. "He's outside." "How?" the warden whispered back. But before anyone could answer, the figure slowly lifted an arm. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a wave. It was something else. A signal. As if he was showing the guards that the impossible wasn't just possible, it had already happened. Then the figure took one slow step forward, and the screen suddenly went black. The control room lights flickered. A loud boom echoed through the building, and every guard in the room realized the same thing. This wasn't just an escape. This was the reason ADX Florence existed in the first place. A reason the world wasn't supposed to know. Many years earlier, before the alarms, before the escape, before ADX became known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, the story began in a quiet neighborhood outside Atlanta, Georgia. Back then, nobody believed a prison like ADX could ever be needed. Americans had heard of high-security prisons before, but nothing like what was coming. Back then, families walked their dogs at night. Kids rode their bikes on wide streets. Garden sprinklers clicked and sprayed on Sundays. Neighbors waved to each other from their lawns. It was the kind of place where nothing bad ever happened. At least, that's what everyone thought, until the night the Alvarez family disappeared. It started as a normal evening. Mark Alvarez grilled burgers on the backyard patio while his wife, Dana, folded laundry inside. Their 12-year-old son, Lucas, sat at the kitchen table playing a handheld video game, listening to the night insects chirp through the window. Nothing strange. Nothing scary. But then, Lucas heard something. A soft tapping sound on the glass. Tap, tap, tap. He looked up, but no one was there. He shrugged. Maybe a branch. Maybe a bug. Then he heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. This time louder. He stood up, confused. When he stepped closer, he felt a cold rush of air slip through the tiny space between the window and the frame. He stopped moving. His heart beat fast. Someone was outside. "Dad," he called. "Come here for a second." No response. "Dad." Still silence. Lucas opened the back door and stepped onto the patio. The grill hissed softly. Smoke drifted up into the sky. But his dad wasn't there. The tongs lay on the ground. The burger patties had burned black. The backyard gate was open, swinging in the wind. "Mom," he whispered. But his mom didn't answer either. The house felt too quiet now. Too still. He took one slow step inside. Then another. "Mom. Dad. Where are you?" He walked through the living room. Through the hallway. Past the front door. Everything looked normal. Except for one thing. The front door wasn't just unlocked. It was wide open. Outside, the neighborhood street looked empty. Streetlights flickered. Crickets hummed in the grass. A soft breeze blew across the pavement. Lucas felt his chest tighten. Something was wrong. He stepped toward the open doorway. And that's when he saw it. A shape standing at the end of the driveway. A man. A man who didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't blink. The same man neighbors would later describe as too still to be human, though no camera ever caught his face. The same man who would vanish before police arrived. The same man who would appear again months later, in a different state, in a different neighborhood. And every time he appeared, another family went missing. That was the year the government realized they had a problem too big for any regular prison, too dangerous for any normal cell, too unpredictable for any system that already existed. That was the year people started whispering about the one they could never catch. The government needed a place to hold someone like him, a place stronger than steel, harder than concrete, a place no one could escape from, a place like ADX Florence. But before they built it, before they captured him, before the world knew what was happening, something else happened, something that proved he wasn't done yet. Because that night, in Atlanta, while young Lucas Alvarez stood frozen in his doorway, staring at the strange man under the streetlight, the man suddenly lifted his hand. Just like the figure at ADX would do years later. A slow, chilling signal. A warning. And then, a loud crash came from behind Lucas. Glass breaking. Furniture falling. A scream. Lucas spun around. And what he saw in that moment would change the course of U.S. prison history forever. It would lead to secret government meetings. To a level of fear officials had never felt before. To plans they hoped would never have to be used. And it would lead to the building of the one prison meant to hold the unholdable. ADX Florence. The Supermax. The last stop. The only problem. That night, as Lucas stared at the horror behind him, the man outside began walking toward the house. Closer. And closer. And closer. Before everything went dark. Darkness swallowed everything. For a moment, Lucas didn't know if his eyes were open or closed. He couldn't hear the insects anymore. He couldn't hear the wind. He couldn't even hear his own breathing. It felt like the whole world had dropped into a silent hole. Then, slowly, sound returned. A faint ringing. A soft echo. A cold rush of air. Lucas opened his eyes. He was lying on the hallway floor of his house. The lamp by the front door flickered weakly. His legs felt heavy, like someone had tied stones to them. His head throbbed like he'd been hit. And the house was no longer quiet. He could hear it now. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Purposeful. They weren't his parents' footsteps. He pushed himself up onto his elbows, his breath shaking. "Mom." His voice squeaked. "Dad." The footsteps stopped. Silence. Lucas held his breath. Then, a deep, slow inhale came from the kitchen. Like someone smelling the air. Like someone searching. He crawled backward until his hands hit the wall. His heart hammered so loud he thought whoever was in the kitchen could hear it. Through the dim light, he saw something move. A tall shadow stretched across the floor. Its shape was wrong. Too long, too stiff, like a person who didn't know how to walk like a human. Then he saw something else. The same strange man from the driveway was inside the house now. Lucas clamped his hand over his mouth to keep from screaming. He didn't know how the man got inside. He didn't know what he wanted. He didn't know where his parents were. But he knew one thing. The man was looking for him. Lucas crawled toward his parents' room, his knees shaking, trying not to make a sound. He kept his eyes on the kitchen doorway. The man's silhouette glided across the floor, slow and smooth, as if floating. Then the shadow paused. It turned. It faced him. Lucas froze. The man stepped forward, and for the first time, Lucas saw something clear, the man's eyes. They were too still, too empty, too calm. Not mean, not angry, just wrong. The man tilted his head, like he was studying Lucas. But before he could move closer, a loud crash echoed from outside the house. The man jerked his head toward the noise. Another crash. Voices shouting. Then bright lights pierced through the front windows. "Police," someone yelled. "Hands in the air." The man didn't move for a moment. Then, slowly, almost peacefully, he walked toward the back door. No rush, no panic. He slipped into the darkness like he'd been waiting for this moment. Officers burst through the front door seconds later. "Kid, are you hurt? Where are your parents?" Lucas couldn't answer. He just lifted a shaking hand and pointed toward the backyard where the man had disappeared. The police searched for hours. They didn't find Lucas's parents. They didn't find any fingerprints. They didn't find any footprints. They didn't find the strange man. It was like he had never been there at all. This was the beginning. The Alvarez case spread fast. News vans filled the neighborhood. Reporters camped outside the house. People argued on TV about what happened. Psychologists said the boy imagined it. Police said it might be a kidnapping ring. Some neighbors whispered something darker. But something stranger happened next. While police searched the Alvarez home, an officer found something in the backyard grass. A symbol, drawn perfectly in the dirt. A symbol no one recognized. A circle with sharp lines coming out of it, like a sun with broken rays. No one knew what it meant. But 2 weeks later, in a quiet neighborhood in Ohio, another family disappeared. And the same symbol was found in their yard. Then it happened again in Nevada. Then California. Then Michigan. Every time, there was no forced entry. No struggle. No camera footage. Just missing families, and a symbol no one could explain. The FBI created a secret task force. The media called him the walking shadow. The government refused to talk about him at all. They didn't want panic. They didn't want guessing. They didn't want the truth to get out. Then, after almost a year of terror, someone finally saw him up close. A homeowner in Arizona noticed a tall man standing in his backyard in the middle of the night. The man was silent. Still. Watching. The homeowner froze, and in that moment, the man lifted his hand. That same slow signal. The same one Lucas saw. The same one the missing inmate would give at ADX years later. When the man began walking toward the back door, the homeowner panicked and fired a shotgun. The blast lit up the yard in bright white light. And for the first time, someone actually hit him. The man stumbled. He didn't fall, but he slowed down. The government acted immediately. Agents arrived by helicopter. The homeowner was escorted away. Neighbors were ordered inside. News cameras were turned away. And by morning, the man was gone. Captured. But no one knew where he was taken. Rumors spread that he wasn't in any normal prison. That he was kept in a windowless underground room. That he never spoke. That he never slept. That he just stared at the wall like he was waiting for something. But the truth was worse. The government had decided he was too dangerous for any existing prison. Too strange. Too unpredictable. Too calm. He needed a place built just for him. A place designed with technology no prison had ever used. A place with walls thicker than bunkers and sensors stronger than military labs. A place where he could never escape, no matter what he was. This was the birth of ADX Florence. The Supermax. The last stop. But not everyone agreed. During a secret meeting in Washington, one agent raised his hand and said, "Sir, what if ADX isn't enough? What if he wasn't trying to hide from us? What if he wanted to be caught?" The room fell silent. The director looked nervous. "That's impossible." "Is it?" the agent replied. He walked toward gunfire. He didn't run. He let us take him. Why? No one answered. Because no one knew. Years passed. ADX Florence was completed at last, a fortress buried in the Colorado desert. They placed the unknown man inside the most secure cell ever built. The officials believed they were safe. They believed the danger was over. But that belief ended the night the cameras showed an empty cell. The night he disappeared without breaking a single thing. The night he stood outside the prison. The night he raised his hand again, that same signal. And now, inside the control room of ADX, the alarms were still blaring. Guards raced down the halls. Concrete walls glowed red with emergency lights. But something worse was happening. As the warden stared at the black surveillance monitors, a new sound buzzed across the speakers. A faint tapping. Tap, 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 coming from inside the prison. One guard whispered, "Sir, that's coming from the solitary wing." Another guard's face went pale. "That's where the most dangerous inmates are." The tapping grew louder. The warden grabbed his radio. "Everyone stay where you are. No one goes near the solitary wing." But it was too late. Because one of the guards on the solitary level had already walked toward the sound. down the dim hallway, toward the last cell, toward the one cell that was supposed to stay sealed forever. He reached the door. He heard breathing on the other side. He lifted his flashlight. And then, a pale hand slowly slid through the food slot. A hand that wasn't supposed to be there. A hand that belonged to the escaped man. The guard gasped. The hand curled its fingers and grabbed his wrist.